Affect Autism in its 10th year of providing free supportive content for your DIR journey. Want more? Consider joining the DIR Parent Network. Join a community of like-minded parents where we can support, learn, and thrive together. For more information, check out the parent menu at icdl.com or the events menu at affectautism.com.
All of Affect Autism's podcasts are produced and edited by Daria Brown. Please note that the views expressed during all episodes are solely those of the individuals involved, do not constitute educational or medical advice, and do not necessarily reflect the views of Affect Autism, Daria Brown, nor ICDL and associated parties. Listeners should consult with professionals familiar with their individual circumstances for specific support.
You're listening to the We Chose Play podcast from Affect Autism, where affect is the #1 tool we use in supporting development through playful interactions. Welcome back to the We Chose Play podcast from Affect Autism. I am Daria Brown, and this week I have Dane Wagner. Dane, you are the first person who ever requested my background, so this is pretty cool. Welcome to the podcast.
It's great to be here, Daria. Thank you so much for having me.
So Dane Wagner is a music therapist at Celebrate the Children, a DIR floor-time school in New Jersey, who's been working with the autistic population for 12 years. He started his floor-time journey as an intern at the Rebecca School in Manhattan, has been a paraprofessional, a teacher, an in-home therapist, and has worked at the Ben Samuels Children's Center at Montclair State University. He is also a performing musician who performed a concert last night till 2 a.m, he just told me, and is currently finishing up his master's degree in music therapy at Montclair State University, and has his advanced certificate in DIR floor time. And Dr. John Carpente, who we've had on the podcast before a few times, is his mentor. So thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you for the wonderful introduction.
I'm very excited about our topic for today, which is promoting agency and autonomy through the lens of DIR-informed music therapy, and how facilitators can practice within a more mindful, neurodiversity-affirming approach. And even though we're talking about DIR-informed music therapy, this will apply to all practitioners of floor time. What made you think of this topic as something you really wanted to discuss? And tell us about your journey.
It's a long journey, and I think really this whole mindset really came up from my work as a paraprofessional many years ago. And I think that that's one of the most important roles that anyone who works within the autistic population has in the school setting. I mean, you're with the child for so long, and you're developing a relationship and a rapport, and you just start to get them. You can't help but develop such a compassion and love for the child because you're with them for so long. So in my work, I've seen many well-intentioned people really just, loving these kids, and that's great. Like we love to see that, but sometimes at the detriment of some things like executive functioning or being able to really pick yourself up in those difficult moments. And my work as a paraprofessional, I started seeing that. I started seeing a lot in the classroom where there were things that the child could do or that they should be doing, but I'll pass you the juice box, or I'll show you, I'll do it for you, or I will help you take off, your jacket. And it's like, these are important because we want to give the supports for the children, but I think people have the tendency to either do too much or too little. It's these two extremes. So I've thought about like, okay, how do we kind of like build these like type of maybe scaffolding, perhaps? How do we support them so that they can do it? And even if it takes the longest time for them to put the coat on the rack, it's them doing it, and it's them being able to initiate on their own. And it was a term that when I was in college, I learned of benevolent ableism, which is the well-meaning, good-intentioned person, but because of their own assumptions of the person's needs, like their abilities, they can't do it, so I'll just do it for them. It's no big deal, You're doing more harm than good. So I've been aware of that. I've been aware of my own like ableism within session. Like how am I supporting the children best of the abilities as well as the staff? And I think that it's such an important thing because the agency and autonomy, the ability to do things by with your own choices is extremely important in any domain, any type of profession, especially when we're working with people. It's their voice that we're helping.
Yeah, and I guess this is interesting because I guess when you started to talk, I was thinking you were going in a different direction. I was thinking you were going to say that more general ableism where someone might be working with a child in a way that they're trying to normalize some of their behaviors,
Yeah.
which you might also be talking about. But
Yes.
you brought up something that's really relevant to me as a parent because you said giving the children the opportunity, and you're working in a school with children, but this would apply
Mhm.
to individuals, adults too, that you want them to have the agency to be able to do the things that they are capable of doing. And parents are guilty of that. Doing
Yeah.
too much. I definitely do too much for my 15-year-old because in my head, he's my sweet baby,
Of course.
and Dr. Gil Tippy had a good talk with me in August at the DIR Institute saying, okay, mom, you've got your floor time persona with your son. Time to drop that and just be yourself. And, say to him, like, I heard that you do that all by yourself at school. You can do it yourself,
Mhm.
and,
Yeah.
maybe that's more of a, obviously if he's dysregulated and stuff like that, you're not going to talk like that. But yeah, providing more of a scaffold for the things that my son definitely is a lot more capable than I
Yeah.
give him credit for. So parents are definitely guilty about that. But I
Yeah.
realize that in this session, you are talking about practitioners and how important it is. And I think you have a very important role to model that for parents and to
Yeah.
let the parents know, like they did this today and they're really capable of doing that. Do you see them do that at home and that kind of thing?
Yeah. And like I'm only speaking from a lens that I'm aware of. Like I am not a parent, so I don't want to project like, oh, parents do this. It's like, dude, you're not even a parent. Like, how would you know? But from what I understand, like just in ableism in general, it's just like this negative understanding of um, someone's disability. And it's like it's because you're having this preconceived notion, you're assuming that there's a lot of it can'ts, like they can't, they're unable to. And if that's the case, we by sometimes being too benevolent, like, okay, wait, we're being too nice, we're denying them of that opportunity to do that on themselves. And then on the other end of it, the far end of the spectrum, it's like, well, they can't do that outright, period. So why even bother? So I'm like, why don't like, no, there's something here. And how can we, and I'm saying practitioners just as from my professional standpoint, but just, how can we support the autistic population so that they can do these things? And, I even look at development. Development's not like, okay, here's this one thing, and here's another thing, and here's another thing, but it's a lifelong thing. I'm continuously growing as a person. My presentation, even this one, it has changed from where it was a few months ago. And I think that when we really give ourselves that grace to expand and to challenge ourselves, we grow as people. And for the children that we work with and the adults that we work with, that may be an area of challenge, but how can we support that? Like we're not doing it for them. That's hand over hand. We don't do that here. But we can provide the steps and we can provide the support. And even if it is difficult, that relationship part of it, like okay, like this is hard, this is difficult. I hear you, but I'm right here with you. That speaks volumes in moments like that.
Yeah, I think it is so important. So, do you have certain things that you keep in mind? Because I know you're talking about your experience as a music therapist, and you're
Mm-hmm.
using a DIR lens, and you know all of the DIR practices like scaffolding and meeting them where they are developmentally, taking into account their individual differences, their sensory profile, using that relationship. What kinds of things do you notice? Like, do you have some experiences or examples that you can give us where maybe you thought someone wasn't capable, and then you scaffolded and then they surprised you or anything like that?
Yeah,
And maybe the other direction too, where you thought someone was capable and then they weren't and they had a meltdown or something.
yeah, yeah. I think of an analogy, actually. I think of the analogy of being a lighthouse in the storm. Like whatever that thing may be, right? We are staying present and we're the supporting big, like strong beacon, and we're just there. And the child's going through it, if they're having a difficult time, you're still there and you're just present. You're there with them. But I was thinking about it like maybe the child is in the boat in the storm and it's going all over the place, and that you're the lighthouse and you're like personifying it. But also you're in the storm too, and that you're with them. And it's like, okay, like we're in this together. Well, like what is there here that we can find? And I one of the techniques that I think about for both the scaffolding and also when there is that meltdown is the managing of self. And it's the how how are we being present in this moment? Like, are we making it worse by over talking, by being mad, by quickly acting, like not being aware of their individual profiles? And I want to talk about individual profiles because that's a separate thing. Um, and how can we support that moment, whether it is regulation, whether it is engagement, whether it is that motivating thing? It's like how are we doing more harm than good, and how can we stay present? And it's a mindful thing, but from my experience, it speaks volumes because like I work with children, and sometimes they're having a really hard day, and their hard day it's just compounded with like just transitions and work and all those kind of things, and you're just supporting that space, like I'm here for you, like what's going on, and then having them show you or lead, and just being a witness and really present has been really really helpful. Like just holding it within ourselves, like we don't need to act, because if we act sometimes we may rob that executive functioning of opportunity for the children. And it's really just being present and knowing just the just right challenge, like maybe this is too hard, what can we do to help so that we can make it a little bit easier the next time? There's so many opportunities.
Yeah, because I mean, especially with parents, but I imagine with practitioners too, we so want to solve something. We want to problem solve and make things better. We're so uncomfortable with the discomfort. And Mike Fields, who's a DIR expert training leader, always talks about sitting. I forget how he words it, but being comfortable with the discomfort basically is what
Yeah.
he's saying. And he also talks about what you mentioned. I'll put a link to our podcast we did on creating opportunities, and he says that when you take that opportunity away from them, you're being a thief. You're an
Yeah.
opportunity thief.
I've been the witness of many great moments in sessions. Watched a child who had a very, very difficult day, just came in, was tearing, was having a really, really hard time. It was um uncharacteristic of this child for them to really be this like distraught, you know. And I didn't ask why. I just present. And this child was able to communicate those types of things, and I would give the space for it. But sometimes, like what you just said, like you wouldn't give the supportive affect if they're going through it. It's like you gotta really read. You gotta know your kid. I was working with this child, and they were going through it, and I remember looking at the clock, and I remember like on this watch, and I'm like, it's a 30-minute session. We're at the 28th minute. I could leave right now, but something happened. I don't know what it was, but maybe it was like I hit a note on a guitar, or I put it down and then it hit a string or something. I'm not sure what it was, but the child um, had experienced everything, realized that the time was about to be up and that I had to go soon, and then was just kind of like recognize that I was there the whole time, or maybe this time that I have with them is limited, and still wanted to engage in music. And then we did. And then the session went a little bit longer because I give grace periods for whenever childs are going through it. And they still wanted to engage in the music. And there was a much noticeable change in affect. And to me, I think that that's one of my favorite stories because it's saying like, I didn't do anything, like no clinical secret technique. I just was very present and I was very much like, I am here with you. I'm matching your affect. You're going through this and I will be here with you. And then the child had everything that they actually needed to get up and then make that like to still engage with me in music. And it's never the product. I don't see music therapy as a product, but rather a process thing. Like we're doing this together and there's so much within it. But like that, those are one of my favorite stories. Just that one, and I have so many more. But that one just comes to mind. It's like just be witness, and see what happens, and they'll surprise you.
Dr. Tippy talks about having this, giving across this message that I know that you have within you everything you need
Yes.
to figure this out. And I'm here providing this space of support for you while you figure this out, without it getting too, like he says, having your foot on the gas and brake at the same time. Like you want to jump in if it's going to go overboard, but, letting them figure it out and instilling that confidence in them. So that's what that reminds me of when you give that example. And the child at the end sort of realized, okay, that was a hard time. And I kind of wish that I didn't have to go through that because I really enjoyed the end of our session, but they had to go through that. And now maybe that impacts them next time they come.
Yeah. Oh, it did greatly because that that moment of vulnerability that I had with the child, and I'm not entirely, I don't remember exactly what they said, but I remember the energy, I remember the feeling. It was a great gratitude and of respect and appreciation. It's the trust. Like if that were to happen again, the child is likely to be like, okay, like this may happen. And I think autism is far more complex than just like the observable behavior, but rather an internal thing. And I'm hoping that the individual differences in the next few years are going to really expand and talk about those kind of things because that's something I'm very interested to know, like the direction of that. But there's just so much that we don't understand that a child's going through, and I may never know, but I do know that my time with them in that session becomes more meaningful and becomes more impactful when I'm aware of things that I'm doing to harm or support the child.
So let's talk about that a little bit because I know that you had talked about learning from lived experiences of self-advocates, parents, and professionals, and creating like a new culture. How does that play into what you're thinking of here?
Who are the people that are in the person's corner when it comes to the advocacy, like if it's the parents, guardians, other therapists. So it's listening in and getting as much information from the source as possible that's the most authentic, and looking at the lived experiences of things. Like if the child came from a school that was heavily ABA, it's like, okay, well, maybe verbal directions is not the way to approach this child right now. Maybe the use of structure is needed because this is what they're used to, and that even me as a DIR informed therapist, I have to be cognizant of that it's not my need, like not my needs or biases or whatever that I need to be in check with. I need to make sure that the person I'm working with is good. So if it is using more structured ways of doing things and not so like robust floor time, follow the child's lead, I'm not going to lean into that because that may set them up for that, like a meltdown. They could become frustrated because that's something that they haven't gotten yet. So it's meeting them where they're at and then just seeing what opportunities are there. The ASAN network website has been great. I also work with new employees. So some of these employees at Celebrate the Children, they're new to the school. I break down, what makes autism unique and validate what they do in sessions, like something that's like the tapping of something. There's musical opportunities within that. And keep in mind, I'm a music therapist, and I share the unique profile and sensory system. I talk about trauma of things and reframing things. There's rhythmicity to it. There's like and the 2E and the 3E and the 4E so like as a musician, I can take them like, oh, they're drumming. There's something in there, and even if it's like random, like there's phrasing to it, there's cadence to it, there's these musical qualities. Like Dr. Carpenti calls it a temporal space. Another therapist mentor that I work with, Dr. Abrams, an aesthetic way of being in music. So just looking at things like that. From there, you taking a look at the sensory profiles. Maybe it's too loud, maybe it's too soft, maybe what do they need, but also taking in the interests, passions, the sensory profile, lived experiences, challenges, difficulties that may emerge, like areas of challenges or difficulties, and different ways of expression and preferences. And I do that. I do my best to do that even before session, so that the people know what I'm working with and what I'm looking for, so that when I go into music, I don't have to do those kind of things. I don't have to explain those things. I'm just like, look at the opportunities. And then from there, in music, I tell people, I'm like, you guys worry about the music, I'll worry about the music therapy. Like, we'll just play music. We'll look for those opportunities. And then you see like, employees grabbing shakers and then tapping it on the chest of like some of the kids, and they may need that. Like, they may be very kinesthetic. So it's like, that's great. That's so great that you're doing that and bringing up that affect. And then you're partying. And then when you're partying, other people get that infectious groove. And then we start cooking. And then from there, I'm just looking for opportunities, and I tell people, I'm like, if you really listen to the music that I'm playing, I'm taking in everything that people are doing, like that, from the taps to the highs to the lows, the affects and stuff. I'm putting it all in the guitar, and we're making something together, and I feel as if that's one of the most affirming things you could do. It's like what you are going through, what you offer. I hear you, and I will do my best to support. I'll do my best to back out. Like, if you're going hard on the drums, I don't need to play so hard rhythmic, like rhythms. I can just back out. I can play something simple because you're doing the big thing. You're doing that. And I'm like, okay, I'm gonna take a step back because you're doing something. And I want to share this with you. That's just a few ways of doing it.
You mentioned another mentor besides Dr. Carpente. Can you say the name? Because I didn't catch it.
Yes, Dr. Brian Abrams. And he looks into the aesthetic ways of being in music therapy. And it's great because I see that as opportunities within music therapy, like the and DIR, that there's this play, these aesthetics, these styles, like these cadences, the syntax, the prosody in speech and in play are just like music, and vice versa. So, what opportunities are there for you in the play? And I'm saying play it in both the music and in the floor time things. So there's something there. Okay, like let's learn more about it. Let's go deeper, together or separate, so there's many different possibilities.
I would love to hear more about your music therapy session.
Yeah. Um, so within that, I go into a classroom, and in the classroom, there's staff members and students there. Depending how they set up their session, like their classroom, that's how I go in. Sometimes they might make a circle, and that's great because then everybody can see each other. And we can all be playing in like a circle. But sometimes, the volume's a little bit too much, and I can, some children are in the back. They're relaxing on something, and then I have maybe a few people. But in the sessions, I try to position myself that I'm within the space, that there's a flow between everybody. So whether it is in the circle, I'm not in the middle of the circle, I'm with the circle, so we're all in it. Or if there's a scatter of like classroom, like in the children in the classroom, where one child is sitting in the cozy corner and the other one's by, you know, the middle, and then another one is like just in a different direction. I try to think about getting the cohesion of the group if I'm in group. Like my goal as a group, as a music therapist within a group, one of my goals is just interrelated with other peers, right? So it's just creating that space where it's not just me playing with the child, rather it's me playing with the child and then the other child, and then we're building ideas and we're bridging it together. It's a hard task, but it gets done somehow. But we, that's one of my skills. So I see it as we could do it in a circle, which is cool. Like ideally that'd be great, but sometimes, sensory profiles and the exhaustion level or day or comfort level, they may not want to be in the circle, which is fair. But they're in where they feel comfortable. I have like, I have the option of telling everybody, hey, make a circle, or I can move around the classroom and I can see the connectedness between everybody, or like just shift my presence so that like I'm still in the center with everybody else, and then I'm still listening to ideas and stuff and bridging the ideas of someone else. And because the way that music is, sound travels. So if everybody's still engaged and like we're coalescing, if you look at like any type of band, the drummer's in the back, the bass player is to the left, the guitar player is probably like a million miles off the other stage, and the singer is somewhere like super elevated, but yet they still be making music. So that's how I see it. It's like, like we're in a band and we're jamming, and I can still hear you, and you have something that, is being said, and I can relay that message and be like, oh, did you notice you know what your classmate just did? Like let's do that. And I try to stay away from the verbal. I use prompts, but I use it sparingly. My main thing is the music. So if a child does like, right, da 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 da, and then pauses, then I might replay that da 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 da. Wait, wait, wait. Then again, da 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 da, and I'm validating what they're doing. I'm referencing them, and then I'm like looking to another person. I might give like a gesture, like, oh, are we gonna do it too? And then maybe they'll match that rhythm, and you're just looking for different opportunities within the play. Um, some children may need help with physical supports, so it's um, I can see that being a very useful thing, but I can see that how it's a very big hindrance. You have to know your child. I don't do that much because I'm a guitar player and I have to play in the sessions. But I encourage the staff members. I'm like, if the child wants to play a drum, how can we position the drum so it's easier? How can we use less physical support but like model or show or pause and stuff, and there's different opportunities within that. I think too, because I'm a musician too. I'm like, well, you can't just play fast right off the starting gate. You got to go slowly, and eventually it starts stringing together, and eventually it becomes a lot more easier. But that happens, continuous rote repetition and understanding the just right challenge of it. Because I don't want to go at like, slow and then dot 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 dot. There's no, that you got to go like little bits of gradients, like a little bit faster, a little bit faster.
So, in your experience, is there anything you'd like to talk about in rethinking this idea of facilitation, whether it's for engagement or interaction with the child or during difficult moments?
Mm-hmm. I think it's knowing when to step in. Are they having trouble with the task? And if so, why? Like maybe they don't have the prerequisite skills to do that. Do they need more supports? Maybe it's a motor planning thing or a praxis thing. And what support is more applicable? Like is a physical prompt applicable, or maybe a visual, like a video of the task can be helpful. I think the most important thing is the child's safety is paramount. Um, like, use judgment and take note. Like if it's, crossing the street, it's like, okay, like, I need to give this type of support because this is a matter of safety, not of a learning opportunity. Is initiation a challenge for the child. Like perhaps, they're not doing it immediately because initiation is a challenge. So what type of supports do the child need to be initiated? Like, do they need more structure or routine? Do they need a little bit more familiarity? Are they feeling confident to do so? I know for myself, if I'm not feeling confident, I'm a totally different person. What space are we giving to provide that confidence? And were the instructions clear enough? Did you say it quickly? Did you say it angrily? Was there like something behind that maybe scared off the child? Is it something as simple as using pictures? Visuals can be helpful, practice and really being present. Perhaps in a previous experience, you've said something and it has really scared them from trying it again. So being mindful of that. And I think that intrinsic motivation is the most important thing. Like play is fun. Like that should be the motivation. The relationship, the engagement with that, like that will support, that will go longer in life than I think any type of external things would be. So it's knowing like the satisfying elements within the play experience and bringing that up, and maybe that this is the fun thing, and looking for things that intrinsically motivate the child. Like if it is, say they really like Daniel Tiger, like, well, how much of Daniel Tiger do you know? What's so special about it for them, and how can you bring that into your daily life and really personalize that, because you're validating what they're going through and understanding their uniqueness. Um, so those are just some things that has helped me along the way. I'm continuously learning, but I think that the best teachers are the people that we work with. So it's having an open mind and really just giving the space and having them show you the way. I think is very important.
And I think what's so important that you brought up is that they can shine and show us their capacities when we provide that just right accommodation as well. We're talking about the just right challenge, but there's that just right accommodation too. And I've given this example numerous times on the podcast, but and this is not music therapy, but during COVID, we had online schooling, and they sent a printout of a grid to use as a parking lot and some drawings of cars to cut out and have cars in the parking lot. And my son had no interest whatsoever. So I grabbed his Super Mario Hot Wheels. Yeah. And all of a sudden, he could do math.
Makes sense. Yeah.
He could do math. So it's like, oh, okay, how many cars are there in the parking lot? Okay, what if Peach and Toad leave? Now how many? And all of a sudden, he's loving to do, can we do math again? Can we do math again? Yeah. So I think that list of things that you just provided as tips are really about that just right accommodation, so that you do see that competence come through, because it is very easy to assume that, oh, math is too hard for him, he didn't want to do it, when it wasn't about that at all. It was about making it, following the lead, as we say. That's following the lead. Bringing in the Mario Hot Wheel cars was following his lead.
But and like it's interesting too, because like I think math gets a really bad rep. Like I hated math growing up, but I didn't really have really good teachers. And then later in life, I actually started enjoying math, because it's just like, wow, that makes sense. Like you do this one thing, this one formula, and then you can figure it out. But if you got to really know the formula, I'm like, wow, that sounds really enjoyable. I wish that I had that growing up. But that's, teaching and facilitation is very important. But two, it's relatable stuff. For me, I learned a lot about math through music theory, which is just music's like understanding of math, and it's like all these different things. I'm like, huh, that I wish that it was approached that way. I think that we, just with whole neurodiversity, it's like, it's just knowing that brains are wired differently and there's different ways of approaching it, and it's like, how can we support it? I have a cheesy song that I just want to read the song lyrics to, because it ties back to just relating to the interests of the child. Pete the Cat. Are you familiar with Pete the Cat?
Yes, I think we have one of his Christmas books.
So there's a series and they have a song, right? And I'm not gonna play the song, but I'll share a little bit of the lyrics. But I think it's so powerful because one, a student shared this with me. It was their interest, and I had to be like, oh yeah, Pete the Cat, like, rocking in my school shoes and my blue shoes, like I know that stuff, but it was actually more than that. I learned more about the series. I learned more about the music. I'm like, okay, that's great. I have more things that I can go on. I let go of my perception of Pete the Cat to learn more. So that was a big one. But the second one was I really started listening to the lyrics of some of the songs, and I'll just read a little bit about it. Just it's called Shine, and it's your light is just as bright when you give someone else a chance to shine. Sometimes you stand in front, sometimes you stand behind, and that's just fine. Music has a melody, a rhythm, and a beat that's all intertwined. And each one is important, one not more other than design. Your light is just as bright when you give someone else a chance to shine. And your light is just as bright when you give someone else to shine. Cloudy skies are clear, stars are always gonna shine, you're gonna shine. Your light is just as bright when you give someone else a chance to shine. Let them shine. We're all going to shine. Let them shine. You're all going to shine. Shine. And for me, I'm like,
I love it.
Yeah, it just encompasses everything. It's like, give them the space. Don't do it for them. Your light is just as bright when you give someone else a chance to shine. You're being supportive just by not doing it for them and being a witness. And sometimes you got to stand in front and sometimes you got to stand behind. And that's just fine, and everything's intertwined. The music, the melody, every aspect of it develops within a part, and it's all intertwined. And it's a beautiful song, but I think that it has a very poignant message for everyone, that just like let them shine. Like whatever happens, just be there and let them shine.
And I will say, to wrap this podcast up, the same thing that I said in my podcast with Dr. Robert Nassif a while back, that we, and you shared this with me when we discussed doing this podcast, we can't speak to the oppressions of others, but we want to learn, we want to be an ally. And this podcast is about Dane's journey in trying to be an ally and doing the best he can in his work. So thank you for sharing that with us.
It's a lifelong journey, but I think podcasts like these and opportunities and spaces like these, both in the We Choose Play DIR and just in general, giving that space and that opportunity to grow and learn is absolutely necessary. So thank you.
Thank you so much. And listeners, if you are listening or watching on YouTube, go to the blog post at affectautism.com. And you will see links. Dane is sending me a couple of research papers that he referred to. I'll put in there, and to past podcasts I've done on the various topics we talked about, that, the Just Right Challenge and following the child's lead and all of those things. I've done specific posts about those. You can dive in deeper. So thank you so much.
Thank you. Have a good one.
Thank you for listening. This episode of We Chose Play was made possible with the generous financial support of Affect Autism's members at patreon.com/affectautism and of the International Council on Development and Learning, ICDL.com. If you liked this episode, please share it with someone, like and subscribe, sign up for the newsletter at affectautism.com, and follow us on Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, or Instagram.
Until next time, here's to choosing play and experiencing joy every day.
From the upcoming book, We Chose Play, Raising an Autistic Child to Thrive and Feel Understood. From Chapter 3. It took me a long time to embrace the strengths-based approach of floor time, as I was often focused on the deficits I thought should be addressed. Now, when I look back at some of those early videos of me playing with our son, I'm amazed at the capacities he had at the time. Had I understood the floor time framework and seen his strengths, I might have been less stressed and more excited to watch his development unfold. Since I was new to floor time, I didn't yet know what to look for. It has given me the gift of seeing our son's strengths and understanding how to build from them. The more I practiced floor time, the more I experienced a sense of self-efficacy as a parent.